Crohn's, colitis, IBS, leaky gut, candida, SIBO, whatever gut issues you're dealing with, they always start after a traumatic event. And to be more specific, the symptoms will start when the traumatic event gets resolved. So during the conflict active phase, there's cell buildup, and these extra cells help you digest and absorb this important thing to your life. When the conflict gets resolved, the body gets rid of these high maintenance cells, and then that's when symptoms start. Now, this is a subconscious process. If you have resolved that conflict, it's no longer an issue in your life anymore. Well, half the time when somebody tells me that, they did not, they did not they did not find the correct traumatic event that put their gut into overdrive. Almost 75% of the time. But let's say that we did find the correct traumatic event. Then the PTSD triggers from that traumatic event are continuing to put your gut in and out of overdrive. Now, a good example of this is thinking about a war veteran. Think about a guy who is in a Jeep, they're driving in the desert, and then all of a sudden they run over a landmine, there's a big boom, and 2 days later he wakes up in the hospital. So during that traumatic event, he was unconscious. But now, 10 years later, on paper, he says he's completely over the event. But maybe every time he jumps in a car, he starts to get a panic attack. Maybe every time he drives through the desert, he gets a panic. He lives in Nevada, so every time he goes from an urban area to the desert area, that's when he has a panic attack. And he hasn't picked up that pattern. A bomb goes off. You have a split second to react. The conscious mind is insanely slow compared to the subconscious mind. So the threat doesn't even make it to the conscious mind, and the subconscious just, this is the colon's job to deal with. This landmine's crap he wants to get rid of, but he can't. And a lot of the times, bringing that to consciousness can stop that reaction. So it sounds like for you, if you have identified the correct traumatic event, and this, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but most of the time people have maybe identified the conflict and not the conflict shock moment. The specific, I was in a stressful relationship with my boyfriend, we fought all the time. But what was the one time that was like really, really bad around the time your symptoms started? Like, what was that shocking moment where there was specific elements from that shocking moment that you encountered? Like, let's say your crazy ex-boyfriend beat you with a belt. And, let's say today, only on days where you wear a belt, which, maybe it's like 50-50 on whether you wear a belt or not, on days where you wear the belt, that's when you have bad symptoms. And it's like, it's just so random, da-da-da-da-da. It's not random. So, those are the types of patterns that we're looking for, and, we're just not encouraged to look for those things. We're not exposed to this way of thinking in any part of our lives. So this is what you need to do if you're over the conflict shock, but you're still having symptoms. And this is something my 13-day protocol really helps you flesh out in much more detail, and there's a free version of that in my bio link.